Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 617. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm solo this episode. Jim and I, unfortunately, were not able to coordinate this week due to a lot of reasons. So I'm doing a solo episode, and on this one, I'm going to be talking quick hit about some books like Human Target, Catwoman Lonely City. I'm going to be talking about Batman the Imposter and Flash 775. I really want to do some quick hits and some books that I've been really digging lately that were not on our radar to be discussing, but are some books that I wanted to recommend to all of you. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. DCB Service is your comic book pre-order source. Anything that you're looking for to pre-order from the previews catalog, you want to grab it at a discount from DCBService.com. And InStockTrades.com is your discount source for collected editions, trade paperbacks, hardcovers. If you want to get it at InStockTrades.com. I want to thank both of those websites for continuing to support our show. Please keep in mind that Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. I'm going to go lightly spoilery on this episode, and when I say lightly, I'm not going cover to cover on any of these books. It's a shorter episode, but I'm giving you recommendations on some books, and I can't really do it without giving you the story beats. My goal is certainly not to ruin your experience with any of these books, so if you want to be completely spoiler-free on them, please read them first, and then come back and hear my comments. Without further ado, then, let's talk some comics.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
I want to shout out first in this episode The Human Target by Tom King and Greg Smallwood. I'm a big fan of these books that are coming out of the Black Label, because what they're doing with this is just putting top-tier creators together and doing these experimental books. And very similar to how, Elseworlds worked out. At first, a lot of the Black Label books that were coming out were Batman-focused, which I love. I'm a big fan of Batman, so great, bring them on. But you always want those to branch out to other characters. I never thought there'd be a day where we'd be saying, hey, there's a Black Label book out now with The Human Target, written by Tom King. This Greg Smallwood, the artwork is fantastic. Boy, is this a great creative team on this book. So the basic premise behind this story is Christopher Chance acts as a bodyguard of sorts when somebody's got a potential assassination attempt on their life, or there's a potential danger to themselves. He takes on the role of that person. And in this case, it starts off with him taking on the role of Lex Luthor. Normally what'll happen is he'll take the bullet, he'll get back up, dust himself off, they discover who the person is, they bring them down, yada yada yada, everybody's happy. What happens if there's more to the story, though? What happens if somebody poisons Christopher Chance? Was the poison meant for the person that he was pretending to be? Was the poison actually meant for Christopher Chance? Who is behind this? And who can you trust? That's the story that's being laid out here. Also, how do you deal with the fact that you've got 12 days to live? What do you do? Obviously, you want vengeance. You want to find out who the person is that's bringing them down. But how do you deal with the fact that your life is ending? And that's a part of this story. I love the character drama in this. Christopher Chance is immediately somebody you're like, wow, I feel the danger in this. A lot going on in this first issue. If you miss this series, it's just come out. It's a single issue right now. Pick it up and follow it all the way through. Tom King has never disappointed. Vision is a great example of this. Mr. Miracle is a great example of this. The Batman and Catwoman book that he's currently doing, his Batman run, I was a big fan of. Tom King does something, I typically follow it, and this is another great example of Tom King's great work. So I wanted to shout this one out this episode, because it's a book that we weren't going to get to right now just because we've got a lot on our schedule, and this episode has offered me a great opportunity to shout out something that I'm really digging. All right, the next book I wanted to shout out is Catwoman Lonely City by Cliff Chiang. Again, a Black Label book. Boy, are they hitting them out of the park with these. So the premise of this one is, what if Catwoman went to prison? Went to prison for 10 years, she was caught, and now that she's been released, she comes back to a Gotham where Batman's dead, the Bat family's not operating. There's a police state of sorts that it's run by the mayor, who is Harvey Dent, Two-Face, who's quote-unquote reformed. Catwoman's got to operate in this city, try to rebuild a life, when 10 years later, she's older. The fact that she lives the life that she does as a cat burglar, she's slowed down. She's got aches, pains, her knees are weak. She doesn't function the way that she used to. Now, again, this is Catwoman. So Catwoman not functioning like she used to is still leaps and bounds above most of us. But, again, these are limitations she's come back with. She tries to go home, and this is where things start to get fishy. Police officers are dressed up like police officers, but with these helmets that are Batman themed, basically honoring the fallen hero, all for the purpose of having this new police state where you're supposed to be wearing these G-Bands IDs that it's kind of like Big Brother watching you, which I love because it's very contemporary, very current, because we're all worried about that, right? These days where there's a lot of thoughts about, wow, I love being interconnected. I'm doing a podcast right now, right? Where it's very easy nowadays to reach out, connect with other people. But when I look at I have an Apple Watch, I have an iPhone, my iPad's connected. These are all things that every time I connect to the internet, they identify my location. So the premise of this is, what if there's these bands, these IDs, that also identify all of your information, like who you are and where you're at a given point in time. She goes back to her penthouse, goes to get her stuff, and just realizes she's very alone in this world. One of her cats shows up, and there's this cool, sweet little sequence where she's like reconnecting with the cat, but it's the only person she can seemingly connect with. She tries to go to a cold brew coffee house, and she pays, and they're asking her for G-money. You can't pay with cash. They're like, what are you, a criminal? And it's funny. The guy behind her is holding up the Gotham Post with the cat's out of the bag, her on the front cover, and is like almost holding it next to her without intending to. It was a cool little sequence. The artwork is really stunning on this. She starts to go and try to uncover what's really happening in this world. She goes back to Wayne Manor, has this sweet moment with the graves of Bruce and the family there, and we learned there from that sequence that basically Dick Grayson's dead, Bruce Wayne's dead, Alfred's dead. So she goes back to some of her old friends, people like Oswald Cobblepot, who she was hoping would be able to help her out. Her money, she has no access to her money because of what's happened and the way that Gotham was taken over. And Oswald's willing to help her out, maybe offer her a job, but he's not willing to give her any money because he looks at her as a risk now. Like, how is she going to be able to pay that loan back? She can't operate the way that she used to. The cool part about this story, and it's a lot of what I mentioned with Human Target in the last sequence, is it's very character-driven. So there's a focus to this was that life worth it? Was it worth it for her to be a cat burglar? Was it worth it for her to team up with Batman the way that she did? Was how much of her life and the way that she held it was worth it? One of my favorite sequences is one that she goes to this stockpot bar that is run by Ma Hunkel, the classic Red Tornado. It's here that she encounters Killer Croc, who also similarly, all the times he's been hit in the head, all the times, all the damage that he's taken, if you think about the intense battles he's had with Batman, have had an effect on him. So he too, while he's still super strong and everything like that, is considered by many kind of a joke now because he can't operate the way that he used to. He looks at Selina as an opportunity. Hey, the two of us could team up. Maybe we can do something. This leads to some really cool confrontations with Harvey Dent. It's a great story because it's clear that something is going on in this city. It's clear that she's being set up for some reason, and she's trying to uncover why. What is really going on here? What happened with Bruce? What happened with Batman? There is this thing called Orpheus that she's seeking out. And when she asked Barbara Gordon about it earlier on in the story, Barbara Gordon was asking her, how do you know about that? It's something that Batman whispered to her as his dying words. And this is the mystery. She's trying to uncover Orpheus and what this thing is. And in some way, shape, or form, this can lead her maybe to be a catalyst to uncover what's really going on in this city. Because as clean as Harvey Dent seems to be, there's clearly something else at work here. And there's a mystery that's going on in this story. And I really love that aspect of this. The artwork is fantastic. There's a lot to be told here. And exploring Gotham 10 years into the future without a Batman and with a Catwoman coming back out, this is just really interesting because there is a lot to be uncovered here. This issue did a great job of setting up the major players, Barbara Gordon having a role in the city, Harvey Dent being the mayor in the city, it being very, very clear that a lot is being done for political control in Gotham, and Catwoman being left to try to uncover what's going on here. And being in some ways set up without realizing it. As we know with Selina, she's very crafty. Cats have 9 lives. And it's going to be very curious to see how many of them Selina's going to have to use up to get to the bottom of this mystery. But man, did I really enjoy the first issue out of the gate of this one. If you missed this one, check it out. It's a good read. The Flash 775 came out, and I am a big fan of The Flash. With Wally coming back as The Flash, I gotta admit this series has been kind of a slow build for me. When I say a slow build, I don't mean there's a negative way. I was loving what was going on with Barry so much that I've been getting used to Wally back in. I gotta say, by 775, I'm really digging the direction of this book. So we've got Wally now working for Mr. Terrific as a scientist. And the great part about working for Mr. Terrific is this gives him a boss that understands his quote-unquote other job, which is really great. And it's a position working with scientists that makes a ton of sense as the Flash. So he has some skills that are going to be of use to them. He sees things in a different way that makes him a great part of the team. I've always loved the Flash books at their best when it's about him living in the city. And you actually get to see what day-to-day life is like with the Flash, both in and out of the costume. And I think it's something that's pretty important to the Wally experience. And I'm getting used to that again and really enjoying it in this. So, as in a part of this story, there is this scepter of sorts that comes crashing down. It's kind of a sword in the stone kind of thing. And it's stuck into the ground. And it kicks off with, like, Superman trying to pull it off, and he can't. But he gets really frustrated. I mean, like, insanely frustrated to a level that Superman wouldn't normally do. And what starts happening is in this city, Mr. Terrific, but also the citizens, even Wally's wife, start having effects because of this. And you start to get that the idea is, since this thing has come crashing down, the people of the city are starting to have aggressive feelings, anger, frustration towards just about everybody else that they're around. This happens at Wally's work. It happens in the city streets. And it becomes a great part of this story. Even the Trickster tries to start pulling this thing out, but then all of the villains start coming to it too. And this leads to this premise. Eventually, it's revealed who the actual real villain of this story is, who the scepter really belongs to. And it was a cool reveal. I'm not going to spoil it. It's something that you should really read. But it leads to a setup for the end of this story that is leading to something that is going to be a crossover with one of my favorite DC characters and The Flash. And it's actually billed as the craziest, most meta and wild issue of The Flash ever published, which will be 776. I'm really excited and anxious for this book. It did a great job of showing Wally's powers, because Wally, we always knew for years Wally was supposed to be the fastest Flash and had all these skills. This embraces that. The villains that he had in this issue were a great chance for Wally to showcase his smarts, showcase his power set, his command of the Speed Force, and it was great to see that. I feel like this issue really started to reconnect me with my old friend Wally. And that's something that I've needed from this series. And I'm glad that I've been giving it a shot and really getting into the story. They've been doing a great job of shifting me over. And it really is just due to the fact that I got so used to Barry and his supporting cast and what that story was going like, that the shift to Wally has been one that's been a slow build to me. I'm really digging this series now. I can't recommend it enough. Be sure to pick up The Flash if you haven't been reading this one and see if it's for you. Looks like a lot of fun coming up in this book. I'm really glad to be able to shout out Batman the Imposter #1. This is a Black Label book again. It's Matt Tomlin, Andrea Sorrentino, Jordi Belair, and this book is really, really sharp. First of all, the artwork is real gritty, so if you're looking for a gritty Batman story, especially right now with that cool trailer out for the new Batman movie, this thematically feels very much like it's set in that kind of theme of environment. What I really like about this story is it's a Batman and Leslie Tompkins story where, Batman gets hurt. He has an opportunity to meet Leslie Tompkins, and she has to make some tough decisions here. This is for her first meeting with Bruce Wayne. And she got to make the choice. Do I tell the world that Bruce Wayne is Batman? Or do I try to help this guy? Do I try to understand this guy? Do I try to see if this guy is really trying to help the city or if he's a harm? This is also a Gotham where Jim Gordon is not able to be a confidant for Batman. He's actually been discredited for helping Batman. And Batman does not have the police support. He doesn't have the city support like we're used to seeing. Very young Batman. This is very much feels like it's set in a year one era. And Leslie Tompkins is like, listen, if you're going to keep doing this, we need to talk. And, we'll have doctor-patient confidentiality, but you miss a single meeting. You miss a single conversation that we're going to have. I'm going to tell the world who you are. And if I feel you're a danger to yourself or a danger to anybody else, I'm going to reveal it. So you've got to either have this code that you say you do or we're done. In this process, what happens, though, if somebody else dresses up as Batman and they break his code? And that's what Batman has to deal with. There's an imposter out there. There's somebody out there that's, for whatever reason, is breaking the code of Batman and actually being the criminal that people are afraid Batman could potentially be. And he's got to deal with that kind of world. What I love about this is I love Batman stories that really showcase the human side of Batman, both in and out of the costume. The fact that he gets hurt, and the fact that any night out you can beat him up because he's a human who's out there doing this. And Batman continually has honed himself, honed his skills, but also the gadgets, the suit upgrades, things like that along the way have been due to the fact that he's dealt with damage along the way. It's an interesting sort of world that we're living in. The analysis, though, from Dr. Leslie Tompkins and that kind of relationship, and also the fact that we have got a police force that is trying to uncover who Batman really is. They've uncovered the fact that, hey, this has got to be, we're finding motorcycles all over the city. There's got to be somebody with money behind all of this. Whether they're directly the person or they're financing the person who is Batman. So obviously this leads them to not only knock on Bruce Wayne's doors, but other people's doors. And I love that that's going on in this story. As with any great Batman story, there's got to be villains involved. And it looks like it's going to be out of the Wesker Capital, which is owned by the father of Arnold Wesker, who's in this story, Arnold Wesker, the ventriloquist. But his father is driving this hunt for the Batman. And he's contributed a lot of money to the police. Clearly, again, as we know with Gotham, there's some shady dealings with money being exchanged for the purpose of gaining favor, gaining special privileges, gaining special consideration. And we see that happening here. There's this Detective Wong, though, who really looks like she's tried and true, that's investigating this case, trying to find out who Batman really is, and if it was really Batman that's crossing the line. So it's an interesting sort of piece to see what's going on here. I love this story. Really great artwork. This is something, if you missed, I got to give it a very high recommendation, as with any of the books this episode. I tried to pick out some books that I've been really digging lately for recommendation purposes, and this is certainly one on that list.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address. Feel free to contact us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website. It does feed into Twitter. It does feed into our Facebook fan page. We are also proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. If you haven't joined a Facebook group community before, I highly recommend this group because it's always positive. It's great discussion around comic books and really all of pop culture. Please feel free to go there to shout out your blogs, your podcasts, anything that you're doing out there as well. I look at that as a community, and I really love being a part of that particular community. Thank you to everybody who posts there. It's the first place I go every morning just to check and see what people are chatting about. So thank you for everyone who posts there. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. DCB Service is your comic book pre-order source. It's not just comics, though. It's statues, it's figures, anything really that you're looking to pre-order from previews, you can grab at a discount at DCBService.com. Over at InStockTrades.com, they are, of course, your source for collected editions, whether it's hardcovers, softcovers. They always have those at a discount as well. That's a great place I go to check out and see some of the things that I may have missed that have been released recently. So I want to thank them for sponsoring this show. The About Us section of our show website is where you're going to go if you want to connect with us on gaming systems, social media. It's a great way to find out what our handles are on those. We love connecting with all of you. Our next episode, we're going to be going with the previously announced content of the Batman Audio Adventure Special. We're going to jump into Aquaman in a two-part look at the Aquaman Green Arrow Special, Black Manta, and we're also going to look at Aquaman the Becoming. So we got a lot coming your way, and we will see you next week.
Bye!
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
it's right
Jim,
there.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our